Hey guys, what's up? It's P from PTV, and today we are shifting gears and beginning coverage on a new game that I'm very excited about, BioMutant. Now, I know I sound a little bit different than I do in some of my other videos. I'm a little bit under the weather, but we're still going to push through this, okay? Now, I've gotten early access to the game roughly 48 hours before launch, and while I cannot share my specific gameplay with you, I can speak about my experience in hopes to better help you understand what to expect in your BioMutant playthrough. There are a bunch of points of interest I'd like to elaborate on, as well as take a deeper dive into the class system later in the video. All that said, let's channel our inner ki, focus our Wung Fu, and dive right in. BioMutant is a third-person open-world action RPG made from the developer THQ Nordic, an Austrian-based development team most notable for their work in Darksiders. The game itself seems to pull a lot of ideas from other open-world games. The first thing I think when I see the art style and the graphics for BioMutant are clearly the comparisons between that and Breath of the Wild. But this is an action RPG, so what do the action elements most feel like? Personally, I would say that the combat in the game reminds me a lot of Batman Arkham Trilogy, along with some Devil May Cry elements. But if you're like me, when you hear the phrase open world, the first thing you think about is the scale of the world. How big is it? Will I enjoy exploring it? Don't worry, you'll be relieved to hear that the lush, sprawling world of BioMutant is quite large. For reference, it's more than twice the size of Ghost of Tsushima, a good bit larger than Red Dead Redemption 2, and slightly larger than Far Cry 5. I won't bore you with the particulars, but if you played any of those games, you should know that each of those games boasts maps with plenty of scale, all of which are pumped full of things to explore. Speaking of what to explore, there are plenty of things to discover in BioMutant by just looking around. Collectibles, different mounts to ride, and of course rare loot are just a few things you could find if you're willing to look hard enough. One of the things that I noticed about the map design was in the beginning, certain points are cut off to you until you progress through the part of the main story. Don't worry though, there's still plenty of wild to rummage through before you feel like you've seen it and need to focus on the main story. You'll also encounter places that have very dense toxic fog. You may not enter these areas until you've discovered a gas mask, and if I was a developer, where would I hide good loot? Mentioned previously was the main story, so I want to briefly touch on the story with no spoilers. BioMutant's premise is that the world's experienced some sort of global disaster. This disaster left pockets of places where life was changed, i.e. the main character who, if I'm being honest about, I have no fucking idea what kind of animal this actually is. Some form of marsupial, I would imagine, or if I had to guess. You learn quickly in the game that everything revolves around the World Tree. This is a tree in the middle of the map that actually remains mostly visible regardless of where you traverse on the map. According to the early game lore, the main mission revolves around your choices to either preserve the tree or wipe it out in order to start the world anew. In the sprawling world, you'll find 6 faction groups, 3 of which will lean towards the light, or the obvious good choices in the game, while the other 3 represent the darkness, or some form of bad choices. The game has a reputation system interwoven into the main storyline that honestly reminds me of playing Fable or Mass Effect. From my experience, it's done very well and your character has the ability to behave however you want at any given time. For example, let's say I want to build a relationship with a certain faction. After beginning to do so, I realize that this is actually deteriorating my relationship with another faction. If I want to, I can metaphorically jump the ship and decide I don't want to mess with those losers anymore. Another large and very cool aspect of the game is its crafting system. You can craft together just about anything. I think I saw a banana handle on a melee weapon that was actually a toothbrush at one point. While that all seems a little over the top, you don't have to make anything crazy like that unless you want to. The system allows for lots and lots of varieties, and there's plenty of loot and parts laying around for you to try to build some cool stuff for yourself. Also, a cool bit, the developers have acknowledged that there are over 1 million different variations of weapons that you can craft. Pretty cool stuff. Let me get a couple important yet easier to answer bits out quickly before I jump into the detail-oriented stuff. Yes, the game is fully optimized for both new and old generation consoles and runs a native 4K resolution at 60 frames per second on the new gen. The game also boasts a very user-friendly photo mode, and trust me, with the visuals in this game, you're going to be finding yourself popping that bad boy out plenty to get that perfect shot of your little fuzzy main character. Lastly, yes, there is a New Game Plus upon completion of the main game, where you do in fact get to carry all of your items over. Now that that's out of the way, let's get to the good stuff. Character creation is a massive part of the game. Right out of the gate, you're slammed with some decisions that will change the course of your playthrough. Before I get into any of the class system and how to pick what's best for you, let's talk about the attribute allocation. This is important as you want to align your attributes to match and optimize your class abilities. The easiest connection to make is, for example, if you want to make a psi-focused build that leans towards playing with awesome power similar to X-Men mutations, you're going to want to spec into intelligence, which helps your psi ability and damage and other things like your ki regeneration. Another thing you'll notice when it comes to customizing your first character is the fact that the physical appearance changes depending on which attribute you decide to spec into. I found this frustrating in the beginning because I'm a bit particular on how I like my characters to look when playing these types of games. But fear not, I soon discovered that shortly after the intro or tutorial mission, you have the ability to change your appearance whenever you want to by going to locations in the world that are essentially like barber shops for Grand Theft Auto. Lastly, but most importantly, there are 5 classes that ship with the standard version of the game, 6 if you pre-order the game. Those classes are Mercenary, which is the pre-order bonus class, Saboteur, Sentinel, Deadeye, Commando, and Psi-Freak. The combat in particular varies wildly depending on the class you pick. You can go from feeling very over the top to like a well-choreographed kung fu movie very quickly. In BioMutant, there are many ways to confront your enemies, and there's sure to be a way for everyone to enjoy encounters based on how different people would like to play the game. There's the previously mentioned martial arts melee style, referred to in the game as Wung Fu. Several class types with this style in mind that center around both single-handed weapons as well as dual-wielding smaller one-handed weapons. These classes include the Mercenary, Saboteur, and the Sentinel. There are also several range style classes that offer the best bolstering effects towards range combat in both larger firearms and dual wielding. These classes are the Deadeye and Commando. Lastly, you have Psi-Freak, which is a class that is bolstered most by psi powers and ki regeneration, which is kind of like mana. Now I know this is a little confusing, but this feels like a system that's going to offer lots and lots of build variety. Check this out. Each class offers you 5 exclusive perks. You might find that there are some exclusive perks that are exclusive to more than one character. But what makes these perks special is through your playthrough you will not be able to obtain any perks that are in the 5 exclusive perk list for any other character. You'll have your 5, and then you'll have a shared list of general perks that any character has access to. Some of these perks offer abilities like additional percentage to damage with dual wielding, or just the ability to dual wield in the first place. Long story short, I suggest you read each class's exclusive perks before picking a class and only choose one when you feel like you have an understanding of how you would like to play the game. Remember, this is a single player experience and you'll have multiple save files. I can tell you right now, the first class I picked, I learned quickly was not for me and started the game over with a new class after about an hour. I'm very excited to see all the different and unique classes and builds the community comes up with. I plan on making plenty of videos on cool ideas for combinations of attributes and perks to make the coolest builds I'm capable of making. I think I'm going to start with the Psi-Freak, as I always like to lean towards the powers and the mage-like abilities for these types of games. If you're interested in that, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of my BioMutant update vids. I also plan on making a review in progress series as I continue to play and I'm allowed to post my gameplay. All that said, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single last one of you guys, and I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.